I'm Radhika Zaveri for Podwalk, a podcast that encourages the audience to get off their screens, go for a walk, listen and learn from industry experts on human centered marketing. Joining me today is Meredith Mills. Hi, Meredith.
Hi.
She is Senior Brand Manager of Aramore, and she's going to walk us through her journey of brand management starting at Unilever up to now. And so, Meredith, you were in my class about 3 years ago at Cox Business School. And I've always wondered, when we used to talk about brand management, did you quite know that brand management was your path, was your career?
No, actually, when I started the MBA program at Cox, I really thought I wanted to go into finance. So my concentration starting out was finance with kind of that minor in strategy. And so as I worked through those classes, I kind of started to realize that, numbers don't scare me. This is interesting. It wasn't anything I had even focused on in undergrad, but your class kind of served as the aha moment for me, so to speak, because I realized I was like, okay, I can still be creative, and then I can, incorporate all these qualitative and quantitative skills together. And so until that point, really, I was operating under the fact that I was either going to do investment banking or management consulting, which I know a lot of people kind of come to Cox to do in addition to real estate, but it was honestly the best thing that could have happened to me.
Oh, that's so good to hear.
No, I mean, I don't know what I would be doing. I don't know what life would look like, but it's been just the happiest little career path. And just, I think every single student, regardless of what they're trying to focus in, even if it is finance or real estate, should take a branding class because it's one of the most cross-functional areas in all of, kind of the business verticals. And it's really opened my eyes to not only, how brands work and how brands run, but also how are they seen as business units, especially by companies like Unilever and their Unilever Prestige portfolio? And I don't think you get that as often when you kind of just strictly focus in on finance or operation.
Yeah, it's certainly a cross-functional space to be, but also because the consumer is everyone's responsibility, not just marketing's responsibility. So it looks and sounds like this was a joyful pivot for you from investment banking, and a good one because you have risen 3 levels in 3 years over 3 brands. So that's a lot of threes.
Yes.
And so I was wondering, what are the top 3 things that you might have learned, and what are some of the things that helped you as you navigated this journey from Unilever to your new brand, Aramore?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 3 are: number 1, be a malleable expert. Number 2 is having a fail fast mentality. And number 3 sounds really straightforward, but loving what you do. So the first one, being that malleable expert. So not only does that mean, when you come in at that associate level, knowing who all of your key cross-functional partners are in the finance department, in the operations department, in the warehouse, like anybody and everybody, but it also means knowing everything you can, including even sometimes the SKU numbers off the top of your head, for the products that you're both directly responsible for and even indirectly responsible for. Because what I found, and I don't know why it surprised me, because now that I've moved through the ranks, I'm like living what I thought of myself earlier. When you're at some of the more senior levels, you're so busy and you don't have as much time to kind of get into the weeds and dig around and understand, what the bill of materials on this one SKU is and who the warehouse manager, used to be and all of those things. But it makes you such a strong brand partner because you can go into these meetings with, your VP of operations and actually understand what he's talking about and kind of be just more of a key resource. And so another thing for me too, with skincare specific information, is the team that I first joined was an acne line for young people. So it was really targeted towards Gen Z. And for those of you who are not as familiar with skincare, acne is an OTC product, so over the counter. So you have really specific regulations, really specific claims that you have to make. The language on the packaging and on the website differs from country to country. So what you say in the US, you can't say in the UK. It depends on, are you using breakout?
Yeah.
Are you using blemish? Well, how are you describing it? Are you saying that it heals it? What level of ingredients are you using? And so on and so forth. And so with moving through the ranks at such a high, clinical ingredient level, that has given me just this additional lens that you don't really get from other verticals in the beauty industry, like hair and color cosmetics. That being said, I acknowledge that I'm not ever going to be the smartest person in the room. Ideas can come from anywhere, which
Awesome.
is really important. I mean, one of our taglines was created by someone not even on our team. And so when it's time to listen, which is where the malleable piece comes in, but still carry yourself as that expert and really spend the time up front anywhere you go, new brand, whatever, to acquaint yourself with the portfolio. Which leads into the second one, which is the fail fast mentality. When I started with the Unilever portfolios, I had just come out of grad school. I wanted to take myself really seriously, which I think a lot of us do because we're really proud of the work that we put in to get this degree. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm going to go in. They're not going to say anything to me. I'm going to know everything. And it was just the opposite of what I should have done. And failing has been the best thing to ever happen to me because I was able to, pick myself up, dust myself off. And I learned more than with the successes because when things go well, your key stakeholders aren't going to say anything to you. They're going to be like, this is great, pat on the back, keep it up. But when you fail and when you get raked over the coals a little bit, you're like, oh my God, I totally see where they're coming from.
And it shows that you're trying something new.
Yeah. So fail fast, learn from it, don't do it again or try not to do it again. And then the last one is loving what you do. It sounds really straightforward and sometimes
that's so important.
So important. And, good marketers should be able to market anything to anyone. And I remember in your class, you were talking about the Stouffer's lasagna, and at the time you didn't eat meat. And that has stuck with me for so long. And you just would go in and you'd try and you'd spit it out and you did it. And so I fell into beauty by accident. And it was the happiest accident ever. A fellow SMU alumna recommended me for my job at Dermalogica. And I haven't looked back. So I always tell people who, especially with these more cross-functional roles, like if you can find something that you care about, it'll make you that much stronger of a marketer and an employee and an ally to the brand. I had interviewed at Chicken of the Sea and the wonderful company in LA. And I can just 100% promise you that I'm much more interested in beauty than I am in, the pistachios and canned tuna. Yeah. Great products, but it was just beauty is my edge. So
having a passion, and that's what gives you your purpose.
Right, exactly.
And that makes it when you're having fun. I think it's so better because you're looking forward to your day.
Yeah.
So you've given us a lot to think about from being adaptable and ensuring that you're failing fast and learning from that failure, but also continuing to look for things that you're passionate for. And you're right, marketers can pretty much market anything.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the class, as you think about brand management and learning about brand management at Cox Business School, what were some of the things that you think carried you forward? What were the things that you learned in class that you feel like, oh, you know what, once I was in real life, actually apply some of those concepts or theories or mindset or really just about anything that may have come your way? What helped you most?
Yeah, I would say, honestly, first and foremost is the class set a really accurate representation of what these cross-functional roles look like when you're coming into it, or if you're taking a career pivot, which I know some people in graduate school do. They started in a different industry and want to do something completely different. You're entering into this unknown world, which can be really scary. And your class and the guest speakers that you brought in and your own experience really laid the groundwork to know, A, what does this look like? B, what's the career path after that, which I think is a really big topic of conversation in a lot of places because you really don't know what lies ahead. And marketing can feel so big and broad that once you're in, it's like, do I become a digital marketer? And do I spend my time doing that? Do I do email marketing? Am I an SEO specialist? What do I do?
And what's that day in the life of a manager look like as managing a brand, and especially in these specialties that you talk about?
100%. And then, the second was, how do you accurately talk to your consumers? Which again, I think if I were sitting in a class and hearing me say that, I'd be like, well, yeah, I have my 4 Ps. I have this. I know what to do. You're like, no, but really, when you're a marketer and when you are so close to the product, you assume that the consumer knows the exact same thing that you do, when in reality, you're speaking at such a specific level that all of that is more conversion language, so to speak. So how do you really talk to them and not just talk to yourself and your key stakeholders internally. And so a lot of the things, again, with your guest speakers that you shared, how they've been so successful. Southwest was one of the most interesting conversations, in my opinion, that you had brought in, and understanding, everything that they do relates back to their core message. So how do you do that? How do you make sure it still resonates?
And it sounds like you've connected the dots, because a lot of times you hear about one industry that may or may not connect with the industry that you end up with. So clearly that ability to connect the dots has helped you. And one of the things we talk about, you were speaking about conversations we have in the classroom, and just marketing as marketers in general, is marketing and branding feels like it's everyone's playground. Everyone has a say in it. Everyone has an opinion about it. It's not so black and white.
Yes.
Right? It's an art and a science, and there is intuition, there's experience, there's all of that. So as you navigated your journey as a brand manager at Unilever, and just as a marketer, as you have grown through the ranks, how have you balanced the opinions, the perspectives that you may have heard from multiple stakeholders, starting with the CEO of the company, perhaps, to your cross-functional team that you were referring to earlier, your customers, your vendors, your suppliers? Everyone has an idea or a say. So how did you balance all of that?
I have like 2 blanket statements, and then I'll dive into each of them. And so the first is, I completely stand by that the horizontal and vertical relationships that you build, inclusive of managing them and cultivating them, will make or break you anywhere. And the second is, you should always have some sort of data to present to anybody, even if it's a horizontal partner. And by that, I mean, they may not be your boss, they may not be your direct report, but it's a lot more productive when you do have that, if it's available. And so back to the first is, I recently, before starting my new job, I read The First 90 Days, which is a really wonderful book if anybody needs to reacquaint themselves with onboarding, or, even if you get a promotion internally. And the phrase that stuck with me was, you're the organ and you're going through an organ transplant. And you need to get to know the rest of the body that's around you. And it sounds, I would have never made that connection in my mind, but it's very true, because what you don't want is, you don't want to meet your neighbors in the middle of the night when your house is on fire. You never know what partner of yours is going to give you the most value. When I was first starting out, I felt really fortunate that our CEO was so accessible. I thought he was so smart, and he still is. He's one of the smartest people I've had the opportunity of working with and for. And he gave us innovation inspiration. And he was one of those people who would come down to your level and explain things to you at that level so you could see them at his level. And I think that that's really special and important, because without that, you really, you wouldn't necessarily take it into consideration. And so, as with everything, listen to everything, absorb everything, understand that those relationships, sometimes it can be political at some places. Other times it'll feel like it's your family, which is even more confusing, because you're like, oh my God, I love these people. My coworkers are awesome. I want to tell them everything. And sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And so just understand, who your key players are, again, kind of like I mentioned in the first one. Really be friendly with them and kind of let yourself learn from them. But at the same time, stick to your guns. Like, you'll get a lot of people not in marketing being like, well, I think we should have this TikTok go viral for this reason. And you're like, you're just going to shake your head a little bit. Like, that's not how it works, but I'm going to, listen to it, see if I can do anything with it, and then move on from there. And then the second was kind of more about using that data, especially if it's a project with greater brand marketing investment value. And especially if you're presenting to your C-suites, always have the data. I've had direct reports, and this is like not a diss to the direct reports, but I've had direct reports come in and be like, well, Glow Recipe did this and it was super cool. Or, Sunday Riley did this pop up and it was awesome. And I was like, I totally agree. I think those are amazing brand activations, but I can't really escalate this. I can't do anything with this. I don't know how much brand marketing, money I can put into this when you kind of are managing all of that. And so make sure that if you can provide some sort of, what's the return on the investment, or is it more of like a social thing? And a lot of brands in beauty use this thing called Tribe Dynamics, which was acquired by Creator IQ. So it's called Earned Media Value, EMV. So is it, a huge bump in EMV? Is it, building brand awareness and cultural clout, or have something that relates?
And numbers don't lie.
Numbers don't lie. Right. No.
And the data helps support the story
100%.
and the direction that you are attempting to take.
Correct. And you can be scrappier at a startup when you can take those risks, but again, at brands in the Unilever Prestige portfolio, you really want to be able to make a strong case to the CFO that this, out of home brand campaign is really going to hit and this is what you expect.
So, intuition and experience helps, but numbers don't lie, and data certainly gives you that sight into the direction that you plan to take. And someone mentioned to me once, and I was sharing with some of my students earlier, is spend more time by the water cooler and the coffee machine.
Yeah.
But that's really what it is.
It is.
You're spending time with your stakeholders, and you're doing it in a way where you can share the story of your brand and build that trust, build that relationship. So the day you do have to go and knock on their door because sales are down or your margin is poor or whatever the case might be, you've already established that relationship. And those are the small things that sometimes they're not taught in textbooks.
No.
But that's the experience that either makes you successful or a little less successful. So it's really good to hear some of the things that you just talked about. So as we talk about challenges, and clearly one challenge is meeting people where they are, understanding the stakeholders, listening to them, standing your ground, using the data, all of the things that you talked about. As an industry as a whole, and the beauty industry is pretty complex.
Yes.
And you sort of alluded to making that complexity simple, simplicity and complexity. So how would you explain to us, and we would love to hear, what are the industry challenges in beauty? Because it is such a complex area. It is bursting at its seam in a way because there are so many competitors. Things are changing very quickly. So having a point of difference, having that sense of uniqueness is also not just challenging, but it's constantly changing. So just keeping up, evolving with that change and with those shifts is difficult. So walk us through that. What are some of the challenges that you've been facing?
Like you said, the beauty industry encompasses a lot. And so you've got skincare, you've got hair care, you've got color cosmetics, so makeup, lipsticks. Sometimes people will even lump in beauty tools. And so there are a lot of different things going on. So for what I'm going to speak to is skincare specific. So really kind of drilling in there, but it is so crowded. I mean, it is insane, especially like pre, during, and post COVID. Everything changed. And so with that, I mean, every celebrity feels like they have their own skincare or color cosmetics brand now. And, really digging into all of the things, which leads us to problem number one, which I would say is probably the biggest problem, is how do you stand out in the crowd? And the metric that I use and that we use is our market share. And so we use NPD data for beauty.
Okay.
That's what we've been using at Unilever. Sometimes we'll use Euromonitor. I don't know if that's, even relevant for some of your classes, but those are the two things that we look at really heavily in the portfolio that I was in. And then also, your sellout year over year. And so with that, I mean, I'm going to reference the BCG matrix, so hopefully your class will appreciate this. But, what products are your cash cows? What products are your stars? What are the question marks? Can you look at them? Can you reposition them? Can you reprice them? Can you reformulate them? And then which ones are the dogs? Which ones do you honestly just need to pull out of the portfolio and get rid of and make room for other things?
And that's difficult because oftentimes those are your babies.
Correct.
And you want to try and save them, and you have to make up the loss in sales if you axe something.
Correct. And it sounds really easy to say it like that, but of all of the product kind of repositioning meetings that I've ever been in, you not only have to take a look at, okay, what would the losses be now, but what are the losses moving forward? What does our innovation pipeline look like? And then when you get into the innovation pipeline, how do you be truly innovative, which is kind of problem number two. And for me, the metrics that we kind of use in the industry are awards. So like Allure Best of Beauty is like the Oscars of skincare. So when you win one of these awards, it's super exciting. Or, other external validation is kind of what's going to tell you that you're doing something cool, something different, something like why I joined the new brand that I'm hopping in on, Aramore, with their NAD plus technology. So this, again, ties really well, I think, into problem number one. So what ingredients are on the rise? What are consumers looking for? What SEO terms are your retailers telling you that are important? Peptides, for instance, are really coming into the scene heavily for skincare. And things like niacinamide and hyaluronic acid have always been around. So how do you take that information put it into a product that's actually going to be interesting and, change people's skin. I'm not saying change their lives, but a lot of the time, skincare this is so cheesy, more than skin deep. People have not only, clear skin or better skin or bouncier skin or brighter skin attached to kind of when they buy this product, but also self-confidence.
Well, absolutely. I was just about to say.
It goes so
deep.
deep. It's so emotionalist. And I learned a lot of that in acne for young people. I mean, your confidence, how you do in social situations, how you act with your significant others. Like, I can tell you I had horrible cystic acne during COVID. It came out of nowhere, had never had it in my life. I felt so different. And so it's a journey, and it's an emotional journey. Yeah. And so making sure that these products that you're putting out there are not only worth it, but also innovative and really, packing that punch, because, you've got so many brands with different claims to fame.
Yeah.
You've got Tatcha, which we just spoke about, which is rooted in heritage. Are you, going to be super clean but still clinical, like the Tata Harpers of the world? Or are you going to develop a proprietary ingredient like the Augustina Spaders and the Airmarks?
Yeah.
So
it's very responsible marketing. Because it's a solution for someone's problem.
Yes.
And it's really more than vanity.
Correct.
Like you said, with many of these things, such as acne.
Yeah.
It's a sense of confidence, and it's so much more to a person. So these are certainly many challenges that you as a industry face, as a marketer face, and it's changing so much. And it almost sounds like you're a specialist in your own right. And you're keeping ahead of trends, because a lot of what you were talking about is also changing. Some things are very stable, but a lot of things keep shifting where the consumers' eye is, as far as ingredients are concerned, is shifting, and there are new things that are coming into vogue.
Yeah.
So you're staying ahead of the curve, and you need to stay ahead of the curve. So how is that challenging, in the sense that how do you keep up with what's next? What's around the bend that we haven't heard of yet, but perhaps in the horizon? How do you guys predict that?
Again, the data doesn't lie. And so when we kind of look at the segments that are growing, and by that I mean, is it serums, is it moisturizers, is it cleansers? And then you kind of take a look at the ingredients, what's on the rise, what are people talking about? Believe it or not, in skincare, TikTok has changed the way that brand marketers approach these products. During COVID, Skincare by Hyram, dermatologists were all getting on, giving their 2 cents, which I think is great, because skincare education is really complex. And I knew nothing about it before getting into the industry, but young people.
And skin is the largest organ in your body.
Yes, you should. And that is why you should spend so much money on it, to keep it beautiful. That's what my inner marketer is going to tell me. But it's just absolutely wild how educated consumers became almost overnight. And so it went from, buy this serum, you'll have radiant skin, to how are we going to educate on the different types of vitamin C, like ascorbic acid, and why it's the most, potent yet stable form, which is why you should look for ascorbic acid vitamin C versus another type of vitamin C. And so changing entire communications funnels because of TikTok, and really trying to, get the attention of TikTok, so how it works really fast. And so we use kind of all of those, data plus intuition to kind of make our best guess assumption. And then we also take a look at, okay, who have we identified as our key competitors on the whole? So, is it, I want to go head to head with Sunday Riley, or I want to go head to head with, whoever? Or do you decide, I don't even want to pay attention to them, doesn't matter what they're doing, I'm going to do my own thing? So taking a look there, understand.
The competitor doesn't always know what they're doing.
Correct.
And paving a path for your own.
Yeah.
That sounds like social listening is a big part of what you're doing.
And especially via TikTok. We'll run our own kind of consumer insights, both like with agencies that we work with, or even just like friends and family. We'll have them trial and sample and kind of fill out forms. But you get really quick, really concise, sometimes not always accurate, but on the whole, great things have come from TikTok for us brand marketers, which is funny.
Just observation of what people are leaning into, what they're talking about, what they're willing to talk about, and what they're connecting with, because not everything connects with people.
Yeah.
When you were in my class, Meredith, I've always and you would participate in class discussions and the class project that you did at the very end, which, by the way, I remember what that was, which is a good sign.
I don't even think I do.
It's a good thing I do. I always sort of view as an innovator. as someone that connected the dots, a lot of what you have described is about connecting the dots, which is very important because dots keep shifting in the world. And so as I think about you as an innovator, as I think about you as a connector of different things that are happening around you to come up with a solution, what are some of the tools in your toolkit, or what are some of the newer tools, newer techniques that you have learned in the last maybe year, 3 years, through your journey as a brand manager, through COVID, because COVID taught us, the whole pandemic situation also taught us quite a bit. We are past it now, but it taught us quite a bit. What would you say are your newer tools and techniques that you're leaning into as you're solutioning for your consumer?
Yeah, absolutely. I go into everything with, I am a continuous learner. I need to look at everything that's around me or given to me, or even just like, spending hours Googling. I don't think people like to admit it, but a lot, like Google, it helps a ton of people. And so specifically with that, like being that sponge has allowed me to learn a lot, which again sounds really straightforward, but you'll meet a lot of people who are so stuck in their previous ways and so stuck with how things should be versus how they actually are. And so anytime I'm kind of, stuck, I will go, even connect with people on LinkedIn in the industry who are willing to do like a quick coffee chat. And you'd be so surprised, even if you're not looking for a job, who's willing to take 15, 20 minutes out of their day to talk to you about their experience in the industry. I have had a really great connection that, now has moved on and is in private equity, but had a really robust innovation portfolio with Dermalogica and Versed. And she sat down with me and was like, here's how I got to where I am. Here's the things that you should look out for. So leaning on, incredible people in the industry that you look up to and reaching out and being like, I don't care if they don't respond because I have everything to gain when they do. The other, which is more of a framework that I really enjoy, that is again like very Unilever, it's the North Star metric. So using it kind of to focus in on where your growth is. And so some of the examples for that include so for Spotify, it would be equal to your time spent listening. And for Airbnb, it would be your number of nights booked. Like put a little bit more simply, it's if consumers loved your product, how would they act? And so once you select exactly what that North Star metric is, there are the growth levers. So the things that you're pulling all day, every day to make sure that you're getting to that goal, you're achieving that North Star. And then there's the nuanced metrics, which you'll monitor, but you're not necessarily going to bend over backwards for. You want to make sure they're staying the same, but not really. And so you need to use them to make sure that you're maximizing that North Star. One of them should always be a limiting factor. So you should always identify that weak spot and constantly be paying attention to it and constantly looking at how you can fix it. And from there, when it comes to guiding your daily tasks, this is what I find to be extremely helpful, because if you're looking at something, or if you have, new management that's assigned you to something, or, again, within reason, take a look at it and think, is this going to help me impact our North Star? And if the answer is no, it's usually worth having a conversation about it. And if the answer is yes, then keep plugging along. And I use that with, I've had direct reports in the past. I use that as a way to kind of give everybody kind of like this way to be successful. So like if you are running around doing something that doesn't impact that metric, then great. And then the last thing I'll say is, it sounds really, again, silly, legal pads and like written notes. I cannot tell you how many funny looks I get when I pull out these giant, both my parents are attorneys. And so I grew up with them with these, yellow legal pads. I have probably 10 legal pads anywhere at any given time. So the written notes, just to make sure that I'm getting everything down, because again, as we've talked about a billion times, it's such a cross-functional role. Things happen so quickly, things change so quickly. I want to make sure that my notes, from
reflect on
2 days ago still reflect that. And even if it's chicken scratch and it's a note that I have to sit there and think about for 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, I at least got it. And then I'll figure out what this means when, at a later date or something like that.
It also helps you stay in the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Stay present, whether you're in a meeting or wherever it is. So it's sort of your way of coping with the dynamic world around you. Things are changing so fast, so quickly. So much of it.
Yeah.
So this is really great advice, because I'll tell you, sometimes, you can be teaching concepts and frameworks and this and that and the math and the qualitative metrics of marketing. But the biggest things that help you in life are the the small things that help you in achieving your passion, your goal, your future. So as you think about all of this, and you think about, you've given us great advice to think about, but as if you were to give yourself advice, if you go back in time when you were at Cox and you were in your marketing courses, what advice would you give your younger self? 3 years younger self, not much younger self.
That is such a fun question to answer. And I swore to myself, if anybody ever reached out to me like on LinkedIn, that I would do the same, because when I wanted to get into brand management, I felt like it was like Fight Club, that like, nobody wanted to talk about Fight Club, but they were somehow in it. And so the number one piece of advice that I would say is lose your ego. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but go out there as if you don't have a singular care in the world, because I had so many cares in the world. I was so preoccupied with, I just got this MBA. Like, maybe some people are more humble than I am. I felt like I was like, I just got this MBA. I feel like I'm going to be so successful. And so, really making sure that you drop that, talk to anybody and everybody who will listen to you. And then, the second is I 100%, to be honest, would probably have waited to get my MBA. That would be the biggest piece of advice. I would have looked at younger Meredith and said, it's really cool that you're going to do this right after you graduate from college, but maybe consider, doing the more normal route of going and getting a little bit more work experience. Because on the one hand, which I felt was a real edge for me, is I still knew how to study. I was still really able to kind of understand and digest all of these really complex materials and build on what I learned in undergrad, but I didn't have the real world experience and
apply what you were learning in the class.
Correct. So I felt like when I got out of that program, I had these huge toolboxes that I didn't even know when and where they would apply. And so as I got in, I slowly was able to figure out, okay, this is where some of these things are more relevant and this is where they're not. And I didn't know ever at any point during the program what would really matter more than others, so that I could kind of, gauge and adjust and compare what I was living and working to, what may not be as relevant. And what really hit home for me was I ended up going back to school in a part-time capacity a few years later at the University of Southern California for a consumer behavior program. And I did it part-time. So I was working, it paralleled brand management in the career that I had been kind of wanting to do perfectly. So I felt like I had even learned just 2 times as much, really. And it was just so much more impactful. And so I would have told younger Meredith, absolutely, maybe
some experience,
maybe just get some experience, but it's one of those things where.
But I don't think you've done all. I think you've done all right.
Yeah, I think I made it out
I think
okay.
3 years, 3 levels, couple brands, starting at Unilever. I think you did okay. I'm not worried.
I did okay. Yeah.
Okay. And you went back and you got yourself a mini degree, did a consumer behavior class. So you're a continuous learner.
Yep.
You have left us with so much to think about. And if I may summarize, and feel free to jump in if I've missed something, but what I've heard you say, which I think I'm going to write down on my pad, on my writing pad, and save it someplace, is good marketers can market anything. And I think passion and drive and having that interest and just figuring out what it is that you want to do sets you up for that success. The second thing that you talked about a lot is being adaptable, and you talked about it in many different ways, but really, truly is about being adaptable, whether it is working in a cross-functional team, rolling up your sleeves and getting to know things which you might consider to be in the weeds, but still being able to connect with people who are at the higher level so that everyone can hear and understand the complexity of what you're dealing with, but in a very simple way.
Yeah.
And the last thing that you talked about is focus. So I think as you made reference to the North Star, which is something that you all practiced at Unilever, it's really about prioritization and focus, because it's so easy in marketing and really any field to get diverted and to digress from what you're doing, because there's so many shiny objects around us. So I think having that shiny North Star in front of you and having that focus is sacred. So many different things, and I love the advice that you have left us with as well, is getting that experience, and you sort of have gotten that experience even through your career. Sounds like it, with observation and listening. So whether it's social listening on TikTok or it's meeting someone for a coffee, it's that constant learning to do better.
Yeah.
So all great things. Thank you very much for leaving us with so many pearls of advice. And I can't wait to have you back on campus sometime soon. I'm so glad that you're in Dallas today.
Me too.
On a really nice day, that too. And we can't wait to have you back and talk more about how your career pans out. So thank you so much for your time, Meredith.
Thank you for having me. This has been an absolute pleasure. And the last thing that I'll leave you with is whenever I talk to people who want to explore brand management, what I tell them is you can pick two of the three things, which is first, your title. So most of them will probably look for associate brand manager. Second would be industry. So do you want to go into tech? Do you want to go into packaged goods? Then even more specifically, do you want to do big food? Do you want to do beauty? And the third is location. So for me, I knew I wanted to be an associate brand manager and I knew I wanted to be in LA. So that meant I had to be flexible with industry. But you could find people who, are dead set on wanting to do big food and be an associate brand manager. Maybe they end up in Chicago with Tyson Foods.
Yes.
So I would say pick two of the three and then apply exactly kind of as you summarized so beautifully all of the other things. And I do believe that will give you your best bet of success.
I think that's another great example of prioritization and
100%.
focus. So
100%.
thank you for leaving us with that thought. Thanks again.
Thank you.